Hey Dude,
The 90s called.
with Christine Taylor and David Lascher. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Hey Dude, The 90s Called. I am one of your co-hosts. I'm Christine.
And I'm David. What's up, Christine?
Hi David.
How are you?
How is the Los Angeles weather? Fill me in. Tell me what's happening. There's a hurricane. You obviously have power, so...
Yeah, well, it's now passed, but
Okay,
yeah, we flew back from Texas on 2 nights ago ahead of this storm that was all over the news, and sure enough, the thing hit, and it was a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and then in the middle of it, our phone started like blaring. You ever get an alarm on your phone?
Yes, of course.
It was an earthquake warning. So I'm like, how do they can't predict an earthquake, right? Like, so we had a 5.1 earthquake in the middle of a hurricane.
That's so crazy. I am on a couple of text threads with some girlfriends, and that just, my phone started flashing. I'm in a different time zone, and everyone just said, whoa, earthquake. Where? Did you feel it? I didn't feel it. And so,
right.
I mean, having lived in LA for 20 plus years, I remember them, and nothing can prepare you for that feeling when it just happens.
Right.
So,
and that, by the way, that phone alert came out 30 seconds after the earthquake. So I don't know what.
Right.
What
So did you feel it or no?
We did not feel it at our house, but all my friends felt it. And it was the epicenter was in Ojai, which is not far from here.
Yeah.
But it was in the middle of a hurricane. So the wind and the rain is pouring down, and we're just like trying to deal with that. And then all of a sudden our phones start going nuts about an earthquake. We're like, are you kidding me?
Oh, I'm so glad your travel, that you got ahead of it, that you were not in it or delayed.
We were supposed to come back Sunday. So we jumped on a flight on Saturday.
And how was the move-in? How is Casey? How is the dorm room?
Well, Jill and my oldest daughter, Hannah, worked like they were like an army of ants. Them and the other moms and sisters, like I would come back every hour or two bringing them coffee or whatever. And I'm like, oh, now there's posters. Oh, now the bed's all done. Now the bathroom's set.
It's like a little real room now, right?
Yeah, he's so set up. His roommates are awesome. And I mean, the night we left, he had a basketball game at the frat house at 6:00. They were going to watch UFC fights, later. And they had a big party last night. He had his first classes today. He's all set. We're sad, but we're happy and excited for him.
That's so great. Well, I feel like that's a good segue for our not one guest, but two guests today.
Yes, two 90s kids.
Yes, which is pretty cool. And, we've been listening to, comments. And for a long period of time, we were reading comments saying, bring on anybody from the American Pie cast.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at the catchphrases. This one time at band camp, and the phrase MILF, did that come from American Pie?
That's what we're hearing. So we have Thomas Ian Nicholas today, and he is joined by a dear friend of his who was also a 90s actor, and I'm really excited to hear. His name is Luke Edwards, and we're excited to hear their stories.
And their friendship, growing up together. All right, let's welcome these guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
There's so much to talk about because obviously, per our name, we are a 90s podcast. But so we love to hear the stories of the beginning. And I know it's probably boring for both of you, and it's probably a story you've told a million times, but it's fascinating to us because we have had a lot of our friends on who got their starts in the 90s. We've had a lot of people on who were really big stars already in the 90s. And it's such a fascinating time for us. So why don't you guys take us back to how it all began for you and what the 90s meant for you?
I mean, I guess I'm out because I started in the 80s. So I'll see you guys
that
later.
counts though. That counts because that's the lead in.
Let's go back to growing up in Las Vegas because that intrigues me.
You know, that's sort of, I was born in Las Vegas. I only lived there for a couple of years, and then I moved to Northern California. My mom grew up in San Jose, but then I moved to Santa Cruz. So I lived in Capitola till I was about 6, then came down to Los Angeles in 1986, and that's when I started working in the business.
And you were how old then?
I was 6 years old. I was born in 1980.
My gosh.
Okay, so you weren't playing at the craps tables and enjoying the nightclubs.
No, I was the jackpot, for my parents, I guess. No, they lived outside of Vegas. I was from a very, very small town called Pahrump, which is about 33 miles outside of Vegas. We had the only tree in the neighborhood, and my dad went dumpster diving and grabbed a broken above ground pool. Then he dug the hole by hand, so we had a above below ground pool. So we were living the high life.
Dude, that sounds like a good first 5 years, 6 years.
That was only the first 2. I don't remember any of it because I only have the stories to tell.
You remember the pool?
I just know we had a pool. I know we were high class, double wide tree and a pool. I mean,
whatever it took to be able to cool off. Right?
Everything's relative. When did you start acting?
Well, my mom started pursuing her career in Los Angeles in 1986. She was casting atmosphere for what we call now indie movies, but back then they were just B movies. So, so she got a phone call on like a Sunday night at 10 p.m. saying, "Hey, we have this Jan Michael Vincent movie we're doing tomorrow, and we need an altar boy at 6 a.m." So she woke me up early and said, "You're skipping school today. You're coming to work with me." So that's what I did. I went to work with my mom, working on the set of a Jan Michael Vincent movie as an altar boy. But I loved being on set. And that's when I was like, "Mom, when can I go to work with you again?" And it kind of blossomed from there to finding an agent and going on, 100 auditions a year to start my career.
Wow. And hey, come on, Jan Michael Vincent, so 80s. I remember the movies.
Yeah.
I remember the Jan Michael Vincent movies because I'm older than you. I know that. But all right. So but did you love it straight off the bat?
Yeah, I loved it. And it was one of those things where my first acting role is on Who's the Boss, playing a young Tony Danza on the 100th episode, where he had a flashback to when he was a kid. So he played his own grandfather in the flashback episode.
Oh, I can see that. I can totally see that.
Together. And I loved being on set. The auditioning process was a little grueling. Like I said, 100 to 200 auditions every year to land one job. But it was always worth it when you got to have the fun of the job.
Honestly, I'll tell a quick story because I started acting in like 9th grade, and in 10th grade, I got flown out to LA to test for Alyssa Milano's boyfriend on Who's the Boss. And I told my friends, "I'll see you, I'm going to be a star." And little did I know that Alyssa Milano was dating a guy named Brian Bloom. And Brian's brother, Scott Bloom, was also testing for the part. And it was like a done deal before I got there. So I went home with my tail between my legs. But that was my intro to the business as well. But that was my favorite show. Like, honestly, like in middle school or whatever, that was my favorite show.
I first of all had a huge crush on her. I was like 7 years old. She was 13. I brought her gifts every day. Thinking I had a shot. But speaking of losing out on done deals, a similar thing happened to me a few years later where I screen tested for The Good Son. We spent all day doing mix and match sessions. Elijah Wood was there. We'd already worked on Radio Flyer together. And then at the end of it, I thought I was down to me and one other kid, and then neither one of us got it. They gave the role to Macaulay Culkin, who wasn't even at the mix and match session.
Right.
And then 2 months later, I booked Rookie of the Year. So if I had done The Good Son, I would have never done Rookie of the Year. So kind of
Right. Another
always plays
great,
out.
yeah, that's a good first one. A good first movie. Great first movie. Should we get towards the elephant in the room? I mean, we couldn't have a 90s podcast without having. I don't know if you're comfortable mentioning names of movies you were in. Some of our guests are. It's not a current movie, but one of the biggest franchises of the 90s. How did that come about?
You're talking, of course, about American Pie, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
man. Yes.
I was going to say because there was also the confusion that Luke and I have talked about where people, as we were growing up, often thought Luke was in Rookie of the Year or that I was in Little Big League, since they were both 90s kids baseball films. And then Luke, you did a small role in American Pie 2, yes or no?
That's right. With Adam Brody.
We have been working together and growing up in the biz together since forever.
But did you know each other as kids, or you just started to get to know each other as young adults?
Oh, we knew each other. Oh, yeah.
Knew of each other, or were you like buddies?
When did we first meet, Luke?
I think we met, because we met on audition, like most of the kids in our, little group, we met on auditions. So I mean, when was the first time? It was probably in the late 80s. It was probably like some 89, type thing. But it's hard for me to remember exactly. But then later on, we did the thing that I remember the most was we presented an award together as the two guys who were in baseball movies. I think that was the conceit. It was like, you guys are
Wait,
both-
Luke, what was your first movie? Little Big League?
Well, no, he was also in The Wizard, though.
With Fred Savage?
Yeah, right.
I totally remember that. Oh my God. Yeah.
You guys, I just really quickly, I didn't quite know what, but I've just been to a reunion this past weekend with all my friends from Young Actors Space, who they all were not, like 80s and 90s kids. I just have to tell you really quickly, I don't know if you guys remember Chad Allen. But he was at this reunion. He's completely left the business. He lives in Vermont and stuff. But he was telling us this story about a birthday party he had, and they were like, Chad, it's your birthday, man. And he was a big star. They said, what do you want? And he said, I want Alyssa Milano. And
yeah, who didn't?
And she came to his birthday. That was his birthday present.
She showed up.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
She's cool.
How do
all
you
comes
have that
back
in your
to Alyssa
career
Milano.
history and then leave the business? I mean, I guess you can't really top that, right?
Well, there was a lot of things that happened after that. If you remember Chad's career at all, there were some things that happened. So,
yes. No, I know.
He's doing great. Yeah. There's also the Radio Flyer story. Anyway, there's so many stories. Just let me know if you want to hear stories.
Wait, Radio Flyer.
Yes, tell us.
Remind us about that.
So do you want to go first, Luke? Because obviously I was in the film that got finished, but I only found out probably in 2018 that Luke was in the first rendition.
Oh, wait a second. All right.
Who
go
directed
back.
that? That was a big movie.
Well, which director, the first or the second?
Okay, so you're saying they made a movie, Radio Flyer, and then they remade it like the same script?
They didn't quite finish the first one.
Yeah. We shot 2 weeks with the writer as in the position of director.
Okay.
And God, it was
David Mickey Evans you're talking about.
Mickey Evans. And it was Rosanna Arquette. Ooh, I can't remember. It was one of the Arquettes was our mom. Anyway, we shot 2 weeks, and I was having so much fun. And then, of course, they come in and one day into my trailer and say, we're shutting it all down and everybody's fired.
What?
PC later, kind of, that's that.
Wow. Wow.
So-
Wait, and how old were you at the time? Were you a teenager?
Oh God, I don't know. Thomas, how old were you?
I was 8 or 9 when we shot our version of the film after, which I didn't know at the time that we were a new cast and a new director. They brought in Richard Donner, who directed.
Oh, there you go.
Weapon.
Yes, that's the one I saw. Right.
And so so Richard Donner came in, and it was Elijah Wood and Joseph Mazzello, and Lorraine Bracco got hired as the mom, and we had John Hurd. But I never knew. I had, like, years later, I heard rumblings that David Mickey Edmonds got let go, but I didn't know who was in the original cast. And when Luke and I were working together in 2018, he like drops this bomb on me. I'm like, no way. You were in the original cast that all got let go. That is a true story. I thought it was just like a fable, you know?
Wow, that must have been, I mean, you were still so young, Luke, so it must have, like, it was sort of like your parents breaking the news to you, or your whoever was on the set with you. I mean, that must have been a strange thing.
They don't do it like that. The producers come up and tell you themselves, because I almost...
The little boys?
Oh,
yeah. Yep.
It's horrible.
Producer
Oh my God.
And dropped a bomb. And it was, I hadn't worked that much at that time. So I wasn't, I didn't have any seasoning at all. It was like, it was like, they were like, oh, well, everybody's being fired. I mean, everybody, the whole cast and the crew, everything. And I of course couldn't hear that, all I heard was that I'm being fired, and it was, my God, it was crushing. At the time.
But I mean, for our listeners, this business is not for the faint of heart, and everyone has been let go or has the fear of getting fired every day on set.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I was doing Rookie of the Year, I remember, like throwing like nothing so they could replace it. It was pretty painful. I got like tendonitis in my arm. And I remember one day I was supposed to throw a rock faster than a train. And it's a scene that didn't even make the movie. And my arm was hurting. And they're like, we need the rock to go faster. I'm like, I can't. And then I remembered like complaining about it. And the producer came up and he said, we're only 2 weeks in. If this is too rough, like you can go home. And
oh man, to a kid.
I'm fine. Let's go again.
I do it.
We have heard so many of those stories from our fellow child actor friends, from teens, and it just the way that would not happen today is how things have changed when it comes to the way people are, as kids in particular, handled on a set.
Let's face it, the 90s didn't have participation awards, okay?
Right.
There you go.
Everyone was not a winner. And if you were a child actor, you were treated as an adult.
Right.
And if you couldn't hack it, you get the hell out of here and you're fired.
No doubt. No doubt.
Oh, so true. All right. So you two, it feels like throughout your young careers, were always sort of, overlapping somewhere. Like I remember those auditions back in the day, even for commercials. David, our friends, the McCombs, Jennifer and Heather, I would see Jennifer McComb at every commercial audition. And I was like, as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, she's going to get that commercial. She's going to get that commercial. Like you just knew the people that you were sort of like in competition with, yet you became friends. And when you would see them, I mean, I remember loving that period of time. You'd see all the usual suspects, as we said.
Yeah, well, Christine and I did it in New York. So it was like so much fun running around the city. I would take the train from Scarsdale into Manhattan, and me and my buddies would just run from audition to audition. And, stopping, to eat and see friends. And it was so much fun.
Well, it was crazy.
I didn't care.
It was crazy how many auditions.
You were much cooler, David. So many auditions, right?
Like,
I lived in Pennsylvania, so my mom had to drive me into the city. And we would park in a parking garage and try to get cabs everywhere. And this is before cell phones and before rideshare. I mean, I remember those rush hour trying to get a cab, and it was, back in the day where we really would have like negative 10-degree snowstorms in New York City, which you don't really get much anymore, but it would be like impossible to get a cab. But there was just something about like, you earned like if you got that job, you really earned it. You really were.
And if you didn't get it, it was a fun trip to the city. It was like, you know.
It was. Yeah, you made it cool. You were doing it with friends. I did it with my mom. But the nerd that I was. All right. So all of these sort of like, you know, maybe one of you would get the job, the other would get when did you finally connect as friends? Because I see, it sounds like you guys like know each other like the back of your hands.
I would say for me, and I don't know how you feel, Luke, it was when we did Adverse together in 2018.
Yeah.
Luke came in and just absolutely slayed this role as one of like the main like bad guys in the film. So my character, of course, you know, spoiler alert, killed Luke's character in revenge over his sister.
No.
It's a very, very dark, dramatic movie. But I would say like working with Luke as an adult and reconnecting, you know, just like a few years ago was, I think for me, like it kind of all came together. And so, of course, when we were doing Underdeveloped, there was no question that we were going to bring Luke in some capacity. And I plan on working with Luke on everything because he's just such a talented actor and can kind of dip into both sides, like I feel, you know, like I can myself, into drama and comedy.
That's so. All right, we're going to talk about Underdeveloped, but let's go back. We got to talk about the movie.
All right, we're talking about American Pie.
So about it. Yes, we are.
The franchise. There's several movies.
In Adverse, also, Luke was teamed up with, and I promise this gets back to American Pie, was teamed up with Andrew Keegan. They were like the two bad guys together in that movie. Now, Andrew and I went to high school together. So just like I told you, I only learned about Luke being in the original Radio Flyer. I also learned the story about how I got the role for American Pie versus Andrew Keegan. So Andrew, and he just told me this in 2018.
Wait, Andrew Keegan was in
10 Things I Hate About You.
Right.
He was in 10 Things I Hate About You, which was the other American Pie.
Right. He was the guy. Right. One of the guys that got all the roles.
Yes, we were constantly going up head to head. So he was the first hire for American Pie for my role, and unbeknownst to me, or I kind of heard like he also had already had 10 Things I Hate About You, and they had a scheduling conflict. So the only reason I even swooped in and got that role is because he couldn't do both. Imagine if Andrew Keegan had been in 10 Things I Hate About You and American Pie. He would have just been the king of the 90s.
Yes. And maybe we would be talking to him right now instead of
right,
you.
But how many actors got?
We've got you guys.
How many actors got roles because someone else couldn't do two roles at a time?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's how it happens.
I actually have to thank Save Ferris, which I lovingly nicknamed Save Me. Monique told me the story just a couple years ago. I was touring in the UK. So apparently the schedule conflict was their fault. And so Save Ferris is actually the reason I got the job, in like the straw that broke the camel's back. So they had a day scheduled of being in the film, and it was unmovable. And that was the date that couldn't move, why Andrew couldn't do both roles. Lo and behold, they get like a week out from shooting it, and Save Ferris moved the date.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that is painful. But that's how it goes.
Did you know when you were filming that movie that it would become that it was something special?
I just knew we were having a good time, and it was a good group of people. I was always, and still am to this day, always happy when I'm working. That's my favorite part of the acting thing, is being on set and creating the role. Listen, it's always great when you're on a studio film. They've got great craft service. You can always make like just a premium snack. They've got a nice trailer. You're not like in, like a little hovel or without one, and you always get a chair. There's just great perks.
Right. But I remember when they were screening that around town, I think Allison and I had the same manager, and he came And he said, "You're not going to believe this movie." It like as soon as they started showing it to audiences, it was resonating, let's say.
One of my friend's dads was like a big manager, and he got one of the advanced tapes that were kind of, cruising around. And me and my buddy sat and watched that movie, early. I don't know, it was like, a couple months early or something before it came out, and just died. We were dying.
Right.
Oh my God. It was just because he had said, like, "Oh, you kids, you got to watch this. This is the greatest movie ever,"
So that leak of the VHS tape that was going around right before the movie came out is the reason why they released an unrated version. Yeah, because that version had Jason Biggs in, on the countertop, if you know the scene I'm talking about.
An apple pie.
Yes. Yeah. And then the version that came out in theaters was him standing in the corner of the kitchen, which was the MPAA didn't approve Jason's, pastry love.
Right. But then they got to Eugene Levy saying, "We'll just tell your mom we ate it all."
So, I remember we got a copy of the VHS as well. And it was Jason, Eddie, and Tara and I, we all watched it at Tara's apartment. Because there was like this, someone obviously like duped the tape at like some dubbing facility or whatever it was. And then it like went around town. And I don't know. I think that was part of why the film kind of did well, was it had great word of mouth before it came out, that everyone's like, you have to see this movie. Yeah.
You got to see this. You have to see this movie.
It had amazing buzz. Everyone was like, you're not going to believe this film.
And a duplicated VHS tape with fuzzy UHF lines.
The fuzz, right, with the lines, right?
No Instagram.
Oh, you're
no
so
Facebook.
right. But so what you said was you knew you were all just having a fantastic time. Was the chemistry immediate? Because it feels like you're all best friends. Like it feels like such a fun group of kids. I mean, you had some of the funniest veteran actors, Eugene Levy. I know Jennifer Coolidge at the time wasn't, but she was always a genius. Agreed. As far as I'm concerned. So was there an awareness of that? Like we've got a lot of this, like this is working. Like, do you feel that, or you just are having
a good time? I mean, the cool thing, one of my favorite experiences was like all the preparation work. We were rehearsing for like 2 weeks beforehand. And I remember the table reading, like we were all just sitting in a room. There was actually no table, but just like 25 of us in a room reading the script out loud. And when you saw just the characters starting to come to life, even before we'd like kind of worked them, and we're just all laughing together. We're having a great time. There was never a thought like, oh, I wonder if this will be a hit. It was just like, we were there going, wow, this is so much fun. And how happy are we to be here? And certainly, because again, it was both films, Rookie of the Year and American Pie, were what's called a sleeper hit. And I'm sure you know this, but I'll explain this to anyone that doesn't know the terminology. Nowadays, when a film's a hit, it comes out in the box office, it makes $100 million opening weekend, and it's a big, tentpole movie. All the Marvel films, or Barbie wasn't a sleeper hit. Yeah, it made $1 billion, but it also had a huge opening weekend. American Pie came out, it was like $10 million. But then the next weekend, it was like 10 million again. And it just kept doing that and slowly hit 100 million over the course of 2 months.
Yeah, and that's the difference. Back then, a movie would stay in the theaters if it was just sort of holding its own. Movies stayed in the theaters so much longer. You had so many chances. So the word of mouth could build.
I also
like you
wonder
said,
how
exactly.
much we would have made had they because obviously it was rated R. So kids couldn't buy tickets. So they were there was another movie coming out at that time that some of the creators, I can't remember the film now, have thanked me for their box office prowess, because people were clearly buying tickets to other films and then going and sneaking into ours.
Sneaking in,
oh
right?
my gosh. Wow.
Oh, I remember doing that too. I remember doing that for horror movies back in the day.
But that's
we would just buy the ticket.
That's a big business call to keep a teen movie rated R, right? So really, it's hard to buy tickets.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, they would. They would.
18.
That was the only way you do it. But it was much easier to sneak into theaters then. I feel like it's harder now.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Now there's QR codes and you got to show everything.
Back in the 90s, we used to go to the theater,
school.
buy a ticket, and then just hang out in the theater all day. Clearly, every employee knew that we were just there for like 8 hours watching 4 movies, but they didn't care.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And there were always like arcade games and things. There was always like a hang area, and it's very different now. But that's all right. So that was the first film, sleeper hit. How soon after did you know there was going to be a second? And then Luke, tell us about your involvement in the second. And were you this was long before you guys sort of, became besties, but
well, we
tell us about
didn't know that there would be a second, and they kind of missed their time frame for that. Because when you do a studio contract, there's always like a default 3-picture deal that they can own you if they want to own you. But then
right for a
set price for a certain amount of time,
yes.
for a certain amount of films.
Right.
But they kind of like, people got busy. Like, I remember Tara went to do Josie and the Pussycats, and like Jason went to do Loser. So like certain people's contracts were getting extended, but certain ones weren't. I was doing like independent films still. So I remember like the contract kind of expired, and I was like, oh, I guess we're not doing it. And then like 6 months later, I was like, nope, oh, I guess we're doing it. I guess we're going to do American Pie 2. But I don't know, Luke, did we even hang out on set? Because you also reminded me that you were in the movie. I was like, oh, you were? I know, I'm a dick. I'm sorry.
Great.
No, you weren't there. You weren't there that day. You weren't even on. We were shooting some. It was party stuff, and I don't think you were even in that material. Well, so what's even the reason? There's a reason that you don't remember that I was in that movie, which is that I got cut out. Our scene got cut. Me, and it was me and Adam Brody. And I remember we did the scene, and we were driving away in the van, and he just kind of looked at me and he's like, well, that's going to end up on the cutting room floor, and I was like, dude, what? That's so like negative. And like, why do you?
But he was right.
We just killed it. We just killed it in there. What are you talking about?
Funny, and now he's like, and of course he was right. And here's another, they didn't tell me that our scene got cut. They're like, come to a screening or
Oh my gosh. And you brought friends and family? I've been there, dude. I've had that happen.
I brought a date. I brought Jenna Malone. I brought Jenna Malone as my date. It was so embarrassing.
You're like, I think that scene should be coming up any minute now. Oh nope.
But then when the movie moves past your scene, you're like, okay, this is not good.
Something is wrong.
And that was the only date that you and Jenna went on.
That's right. That was our.
Oh God!
I'm not kidding. That was our first and last date.
Oh no! I'm so
you got cut out.
Luke.
I can't go out with you again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's way too embarrassing. No coming back from that.
Oh man! So you did the second and then a third, and what were they all just as fun? Like, did you feel like it was just so great to be able to get everybody back together?
Yeah, we started having more fun, I think, off camera. Each film that we did, especially when we started traveling. So like we did American Wedding, we did 2 weeks up in Half Moon Bay at the Ritz-Carlton there, where part of the wedding, where the wedding took place. And we just got into a lot of trouble on the weekends. And then when we did American Reunion, we actually shot for the very first time on location because everything else was in Los Angeles. So all of us went to Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm pretty sure you can read about us on TMZ on our weekends.
And
Can I ask you
were you
about
all in your 20s at that, your mid 20s or early 20s at that point, probably? Yeah.
Well, so for the mid-20s, it was like 2001, 2003 for 2 and 3, and then it was American Reunion wasn't until 2011. So at that time, I probably should have been smarter about it. I was, married at the time. My first kid was, a bun in the oven. Yeah. So I was a bit older.
Those reunions, anytime they put the reunion on there, we're always a little bit older.
So it's funny actually, because now my son, who, we're just talking about, was, about to be born after we did American Reunion. He is following in my footsteps, and he started acting when he was 6 as well. And he's in Underdeveloped. He plays Tom Arnold's son on episode 2. And it's funny, we're talking about like the number of auditions that we all did growing up. That kid, my son, has landed a job. His first job was on New Girl, playing Zooey Deschanel and Jake Johnson's son. Of course, he was in Adverse, which, I produced that Luke is in. Then he booked the M. Night movie Old, and he was the main kid on the beach.
Oh,
and now he's
my
Arnold's son in
gosh.
Underdeveloped. He's done 4 jobs, and I swear the kid's only been on like 35 auditions in his whole life.
Wow.
So his batting average is pretty good.
He's got the chops.
And a little bit of nepotism. What are you going to do?
Sprinkle a little nepotism in. That's the reality. But so talk to us about Underdeveloped, because this sounds awesome. And I'm looking at the poster behind you, and it looks like a lot of, like, I see Dave Koechner. You mentioned Tom Arnold. What a cast. And it sounds like a really fun.
There's also, if I could point to it, Mark Pellegrino.
Okay.
From Supernatural.
His face is very tiny in this photo, but he's great. Yes.
Well, he basically is our nefarious, funder of the studio. So okay. It's a mockumentary. And obviously you got Sam Levine, who was in Not Another Teen Movie.
Terrific.
So it's a mockumentary. We're all failed producers, forced to work together. And it's kind of timely, actually, because we deal with a lot of the issues that we're on strike for right now. Because Tom Arnold is paying himself way too much money. So there's, the discrepancy of pay from studio executives. And there's a bit of, favoritism, nepotism, racism. We deal with all the unfortunate issues that we run into in the workplace. So it's not just for, people that understand, like ourselves, that understand the industry. It's for anyone that's ever worked and maybe had to deal with someone that they didn't want to work with.
I saw something in the notes that it gives a little bit of insight, because a lot of times when you are doing an industry project, it feels very inside, and you feel like, oh, is this only going to play to our world? And I was reading that is not the case. Yes, that this is really like for a little bit of the outsiders who are looking in to get a little taste. Is that true?
Yes, it is. It is definitely for instance, my character, Joe, is ready to get his promotion. He's worked at the company for a long time. So the opening of the entire series is him getting passed up for that promotion because Tom Arnold hires his brother-in-law who has 0 experience.
And there's your nepotism storyline, right?
Yeah, right out of the gate. Right. And I think that's something that I've even seen the comments on our trailer on YouTube. People that don't work in the industry are like, oh my gosh, that's my life. Because Joe gets basically told, hey, you get you're going to still be running the division. You just don't have the title, the money, or the prestige, but you're in charge.
But
and we've all been there where
family
we're
is going to get the title. I know.
Right.
That's what's, not to go on the nepotism, sort of is to get too sidetracked, but that is in every business, right? I know we get targeted in our entertainment industry because of, how, public.
Well, because we're in the press.
Yes, we're in the press.
The only difference is we're getting talked about in the press with it happening, but it is something that everyone has experienced where
in corporate
they
America
deserve the promotion, and the brother-in-law or the cousin or the someone else comes in and takes the position like, what am I, chopped liver?
Exactly. So that's
I think nepotism's harder in our business, especially in front of the camera, because you have studios and directors and a whole team of people that need to agree that your child or your family is the best person for the role. There's a lot riding on it. It's easier to give your kid, a job at, a family business as opposed to in front of an entertainment project.
Yeah, well, the other part of that is in those other businesses that aren't advertised, that aren't on camera, if that person is terrible at their job, no one will know. They'll just keep their job.
They do it anonymously.
Exactly.
It's anonymous. Exactly. You put someone in front of the camera and they can't act.
You can't fail.
Everyone.
Right. I don't care. I don't care who their parents are. They're done.
Yes. You
go
do
do
not
something
fail
else.
Anonymously. That is exactly it. And Luke, tell us about your role in Underdeveloped. Are you the bad guy again? Because I'm getting this theme here that you play bad guy, and I don't see it at all. All I see is a big smile and.
Well, I do love playing bad guys, man. They are a lot of fun.
So fun.
He is a bad guy of a sort. he's the worst guy, actually. He's like a he's like an action movie guy, action hero, star, that they bring in. They're trying to do some negotiations with, but he's the absolute worst action movie star you've ever met. He's my way of thinking about it is he's even worse than Steven Seagal.
Oh boy.
He's horrible. He means well, and everything. He's just, the worst.
Is he the worst in that he is just has the biggest ego? He's a terrible actor. How is he the worst?
All of the above.
Okay, I only named two, so I bet there's more too.
Yeah, all
that
of
we'll have to
things.
watch to find out.
And a lot like some of these actual action movie guys, he's not the brightest. He's
not the brightest bulb.
Just not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Oh, that's fun to play though, right?
Oh my God, it was so much fun to play.
I love the Larry Sanders Show and even Waiting for Guffman, any sort of behind the scenes, any level of show business. Devour that. I love it.
Speaking of unfair wages, like what we're fighting for in the strike, there's a moment where we get funded for $7 million for a project. And Tom Arnold goes, great. That's $5 million for me. $1 million for Johnny Darrow, which is Luke's character, and the other $1 million to go make the movie.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not far from what happens.
Right. Well, the good thing is that because we're a comedy, we can deal with the real life issues that we have, but deliver the information in a way that's gonna, bring some lightheartedness to it. So we can tackle some things that are obviously awful in our real life, but we can have a good laugh about them while watching the show.
And the audience will get a little inside look as to really what goes on in the making of a movie.
Well, I don't know about the making of a movie. These are all failed producers. So it's them trying to make movies.
The dysfunction,
yes,
right?
The total dysfunction.
Oh, that sounds so funny. And were you involved in creating this or producing it, or what is both of you?
Luke is.
Or are you both just?
Luke is acting in it. I am playing Joe, one of the main characters. I am also one of the 3 executive producers, along with Kelly Arjun and Brian A. Metcalf, my business partners. Brian is, of course, the writer, director, and showrunner of the season.
Oh, terrific. And you have the whole season shot already.
Yeah, it comes out on Tubi September 8th, the whole season. You can binge watch us on Friday, September 8th.
Can I just go back before we let you go? I wanted, because of the cast of American Pie, I just want to go through the cast and have you give me your impression of everybody.
Oh, this is where they're going to get me in trouble, Luke.
No, just, whatever. It could be a one word thing or a quick snippet. Jason Biggs.
Adam Sandler. I mean, Jason Biggs.
Uh-oh.
Allison Hannigan.
My goodness. I mean, I'm trying to think of, like, I didn't have much interact. I mean, I love Allison as a person, but our two characters didn't really weren't in many scenes together. But
she's so different than that character, right?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, what she brought to that character is so outside of herself that it's hilarious.
I mean, that line one time at band camp, like, people still say that. You know, like, if anyone says this one time, someone else will go, at band camp.
Yeah. she has the best line of the entire series.
Natasha Lyonne.
Natasha's the best. I've been friends with her for a long, long time, and it was fantastic to work with her. And I'm just so happy for her current success, you know, with Russian Doll and Poker Face. Like, she's just slaying it out there right now. And I'm so excited for her. She deserves it.
Me too. What about Stifler, Sean William Scott?
Total opposite. He is like the most polite Minnesota boy you've ever met in your entire life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like polar opposite of his character.
Oh my God. By the way, my brother-in-law's dog is named Stifler.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, it's such an iconic character. I don't know.
So on the nose.
Stifler.
That's hilarious.
Let's go. Chris Klein.
Chris Klein. I mean, that is Chris Klein. Let's face it. His first, he was telling me, like, his first job was election, because they were,
oh my God, one of my favorite movies
They were
ever.
scouting the high school in Nebraska where he lived, and he walked around the corner and bumped into the, like, location manager and, like, the director, and they're like, "Oh, you should come audition for this." And I mean, Chris is not, like, as jock-ish, but he's a jock. That's pretty much, we all know Chris. If you've seen Chris, like, that's Chris.
What a great first movie, and, like, he bumped into somebody and is in his hometown. I mean,
Right.
Christine Alexander Payne is, like, I think, my favorite director. Let's go Jennifer Coolidge.
Comedic genius. She is absolutely amazing. I love her to pieces. I mean, look, my band even has a song. We appropriated Stacy's mom and rewrote it to Stifler's mom. And that's on my Frat Party album, which is it came out in 2017, but it will be released on vinyl in December of this year.
Oh, so cool.
Awesome.
Every time you guys play that, it gets me. I know it's coming too, you know. And every time I just break it.
Stifler's mom.
Yeah.
Got it going.
We start most of our shows with that song, and it's like, I just go 3, 2, 1. Everybody's phone comes up.
It's so cool because everyone, it merges your music with everyone knowing who you are and how they know you, right?
It's my way of pointing out the elephant in the room right at the start of my show.
I love it.
It's brilliant. Brilliant.
What about Tara Reid?
Tara Reid is the sweetest. We actually do a lot of Comic-Cons together. So I get to see her probably more often than anyone else in the cast. And she's always just, like, I remember when we first went to San Diego Comic-Con, or we were scheduled to go there for Underdeveloped and do a panel. Like, the strike got announced, and she called me immediately. "Hey, I just want to make sure you know that the strike's happening. Like, I don't know if you can still go to San Diego Comic-Con." She's just, like, looking out for us. Of course, we signed the waiver and the interim agreement, so we were safe. But it was just so sweet that was, like, one of her first thoughts was to, you know, make sure that I wasn't going to, like, you know, cross the picket lines and get blacklisted.
Right.
And that was your love interest, right? I mean, that was, you had most work with her. You guys were so great together.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, she's, like I said, she's a sweetheart.
What about Eddie K. Thomas? Because he's, you know, in my mind, he's the guy that slept with Stifler's mom, right? So, and he just seemed like a 40-year-old man in a 16-year-old body.
Yeah, now he's just a 40-year-old man in a 40-year-old's body. But my favorite part of that is that fact that he's the only one who's younger than me in the whole cast. So when we were doing the first film, he was 17, which is why they couldn't show Finch and Stifler's mom getting it on, because he was underage. But it plays so well to have that happen off camera that I couldn't imagine actually seeing it. It wouldn't be as funny.
Right. No, the dialogue says it all. He's like, is that a double malt scotch? She's like aged 18 years.
Just the way I like it.
It's so great to meet you both. And Luke, thank you for joining and, for letting us in a little bit on your friendship. I think it's always, David and I go so far back, and we started on a kids show together, and we sort of started to come up in the 90s. And then we just sort of went our separate ways. Like when our show ended in 1991, none of us had cell phones. We didn't give each other cell phone numbers. We all had home phone numbers, which was essentially like our parents, like where we grew up, because we were all just like, so.
Hi, Mrs. Taylor. Is Christine there?
Exactly. And so we stayed in touch for a couple years in LA, and then really lost touch until we did the reunion, our 25th reunion for our show. So, I have such a soft spot for, these stories of these friendships. And like, even though you weren't super close, you were in each other's lives since you were little boys.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And look at you as grown men, and Thomas, like, honestly, you saying that you'll work with Luke in every project you do, like, when you have a friendship like that and a co-actor and a co-collaborator who you love like that, and you can do that in your work, that there's nothing better. Like,
oh yeah,
it's this stage in my life, I'm all about like who is the job with, and if it's about being with people I love or somebody I've been dying to work with, sign me up. I don't care how it does. I don't care how much money. I just want to be around cool people. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those things. That's my partnership also with Brian A. Metcalf, is that we've been working together for 20 years now. We've produced a half a dozen feature films and now this TV series. And Kelly Arjun joined the team like 8 years ago. So, Luke doesn't know it until now because I'm saying it like it's being recorded. So now this is a contractual obligation because I'm in the state of California, Luke, and so are you. We always, whenever we're putting a project together, we're like, where can we put Luke Edwards? We have to have him in here.
That's
an
cool.
Awesome friendship, man. Really. I get it.
Well, thank you both so much. We're excited for Underdeveloped.
When is it coming out?
September 8th. So
awesome.
Very, very soon. And if are you guys here in Los Angeles, or you're in New York still, East Coast or?
East Coast.
East Coast.
I'm in LA. I'm in LA.
You should come to the premiere. I don't know how I get in touch with you, but you're welcome to come. We're having it on September 5th.
Okay, I'll have our producer reach out to you. I'd love to, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to have you there. Luke, you're coming, right?
Oh, you're not cut out, right, Luke?
Not this time.
I'm gonna find out at the premiere. So
yes.
Don't bring a date. Don't bring a date.
Unfortunately, Luke gets talked about in episode, because we're doing episodes 1 and 2 for the premiere.
Right.
Luke gets talked about in episode 2, but we don't meet him until episode 3. So.
That's why your presence needs to be felt at the premiere. You need to be in that room.
You need to be there, but don't bring Jenna Malone.
At least you could say I'm in episode 3. I start.
I'm gonna bring my wife, and then when she sees I've been cut out, she's gonna leave me.
No, but you're
Oh,
come on.
You're safe.
I'm gonna invite Jenna Malone.
Just tell your wife to wait 2 weeks till episode 3, and she'll want to stay with you. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Good luck with everything. I can't wait to watch.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, that was very cool.
That was great.
I mean, we can't have a 90s podcast without having a cast member from American Pie.
I know, and that Thomas is our first, and just the fact that Luke was able to come on and sort of like I like I said in the interview, I love the way a story comes together when you have somebody else sort of witnessing that period of time in your life separately. Like the way I talked about our friend Jen McComb, like we have that about each other. Like we remember those times where we would see each other at auditions, and then for them to be friends now at this stage in their lives, and what a sort of sweet mutual respect, and that show seems so funny.
I love behind the scenes, making of Hollywood stuff. But I agree with you. Like the friendships. I saw Heather and Jen McComb the other day. Heather's at my friend Scotty Campbell's birthday, and I hadn't seen them in a very long time. But it's like, you instantly pick up right where you left off, and you feel like these people know you almost better than anyone that you've been friends with currently, right? It's like you came up together.
Yes.
And so I get it. I get why he had his buddy on, and I think it's super cool.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And thank you for joining us, everybody, as always.
Have a great week, guys.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe and give us 5 stars.
And please follow us on Instagram at Hey Dude, the 90s Called. See you next time.